One of my favorite games of all time is Final Fantasy Tactics. What does Final Fantasy Tactics have to do with Risk of Rain? Well, let me explain. In Final Fantasy Tactics, you have different job classes like Knight, Archer, White Mage, Time Mage, Black Mage, and so on. The thing is, you can mix and match skills from different jobs on the same character. So you can have a Knight that can stop time, or an Archer that can cast healing magic. The potential for pairing up abilities that make your character completely overpowered is not only extremely high, but it is also made easier because you can essentially grind experience and skill points forever with very little effort. I'm not gonna go into the specifics of how this is done, but the point is, Final Fantasy Tactics is a game where you can become just absolutely godlike and break the game's intended difficulty completely, and I just absolutely love that. The reason that I bring up Final Fantasy Tactics is because Risk of Rain 2 delivers that same experience, the same satisfaction of breaking a game in a completely different way. The basic gameplay loop is very simple. You kill enemies, collect gold, and use that gold to unlock chests that give you random items. Now the thing is, these items all stack, and items can trigger other items and effect in an infinite chain of reaction that dominates your screen with numbers and explosions. So let's say I have the ukulele, which is an item that will create a chain lightning through several enemies. And I also have another item that adds a chance to bleed the enemy whenever they are hit. Now, whenever the lightning hits an enemy, that's also gonna trigger the chance of them bleeding. And you can increase the chances of the lightning going off and the bleeding happening by just getting more of those same items. And since all of this triggers whenever you hit an enemy, you might trigger the effect 100 times, which will stack 100 bleeding effects all at once. But it doesn't stop there. Say you have an ability that fires off 8 shots in quick succession. Increasing your attack speed won't fire those 8 shots faster, it will actually fire way more shots in that same time frame, which again increases your chances of triggering everything you have. There's a character that has turrets that he can place down. Whatever items you pick also get inherited by your turrets, which doesn't make any sense and is something that you wouldn't find in basically any other game, but that's the way things are in Risk of Rain 2. So your turrets will get stuff like health regeneration, increased attack speed, and crit chance will cause bleeding, and so on. You can imagine how quickly things go from fun and weird to absolutely insane when you start stacking more and more items to the point that it's just really hard to tell what's going on at times. And yet, while you're playing, it all kind of makes sense and you're still able to dodge attacks and target specific enemies in the middle of all the chaos. But these mechanics don't all just benefit the player. As soon as you start a new run, there is a literal clock ticking. Each minute, enemies get harder and deal more damage, spawn in bigger numbers and actual size, and have increasingly better attacks. The difficulty is always increasing, much in the same way that your damage and insanity of item combinations is as well. And you need to strike a fine balance between getting more items to get more powerful and not wasting too much time to get to the end of the game before things get way too hard, because no matter how powerful you are, you will eventually meet your match. But again, because this game is actually extremely good and not one of those roguelikes that only relies entirely upon difficulty to increase playtime, it's actually not that hard. Or at least you can tailor the difficulty to your liking, with easy difficulty being actually easy. In the past, I've tried games like Rogue Legacy and Spelunky and been disappointed both by the combat and the insane difficulty that demands you replay the same level 15 times before beating it and punishes any and all mistakes with a swift death. But that's definitely not the case with Risk of Rain 2. You can unlock pretty much everything while playing in the easiest difficulty, and you can even use modifiers which change the rules of the game slightly to give you an advantage in game. Now, if you enjoy those really hard games, then more power to you, but I really don't. In fact, I don't like most of the roguelikes that I've ever played because I tend to like the more handcrafted experience rather than just repeating some randomized content over and over while trying to learn to do things perfectly. There is room for error here, and you can choose to play whichever way you like. So you can have an impossibly difficult run, or just set things to easy and just chill out. What I'm trying to say is that Risk of Rain 2 is one of those games that's been on my radar for quite some time, basically ever since it was released on early access a year ago. The surprisingly distinct visual style, the idea of running around these alien landscapes while destroying everything in sight, the intriguing enemy design and exploration made me want to play this. But I was afraid that this was just another one of those indie games that gets hyped by the media and then turns out to be only really appealing to a very narrow audience. I'm glad to tell you that is not the case here. So if you've been burned before by these types of games, like I have, then don't worry and really think about giving this one a go. Now, I can't really keep talking about this game without mentioning the music, which is just fantastic. There's this Pink Floyd style rock slowly creeping from a mere background tune to a full-on wailing guitar and drums just completely ripping it as things get increasingly more chaotic and spectacular. It is a perfect match with the style of both the action and the levels that you go through, which have this mysterious vibe to them with what seems to be like remnants of old alien technology that is now partially buried in the terrain. The soundtrack has a very similar pace to it at all times, reminding you of that ticking clock dominating every aspect of that game's difficulty. But it never gets repetitive or boring. It is truly wonderfully crafted music that I just find myself humming from time to time, almost calling on me to play that one more run. Every level has a distinct look to it. They are not procedurally generated or anything like that, which I actually worry might make things boring after putting more and more hours into it. The placement of things and which branches of the level are open is random, and some of them, or maybe all of them, have secrets to find and discover. Speaking of which, there are multiple items, modifiers, and characters to unlock, sometimes through simple challenges, and some hidden behind layers of secrecy that you will either have to decipher on your own or just look up online. I've tried my best not to find out too many things about this, while also trying to get enough secrets and characters to get a feel for the game's entirety of content. There's currently 97 items, 30 pieces of equipment, and 10 different playable characters called survivors. Each survivor plays vastly different from one another and have different loadouts which will alter your skills and attacks, sometimes quite dramatically. Suffice to say that there is a ton of content to go around, but that doesn't really matter if the game itself gets boring or repetitive. And in regards to that, I don't think this is a game that I would like to play alone, since a lot of the enjoyment, at least for me, comes from sharing the insanity of what's going on with a friend, as well as learning to synergize your different skill sets together. As a co-op game, however, the number of different combinations of loadouts, characters, items, enemies, and difficulty that you can get in each new run seems absolutely crazy. This is kind of what I was expecting from something like Destiny 2, where I thought different weapons and classes would play completely different from one another, and they really don't. In that sense, as a co-op game, this is one of the best experiences that I've had in quite some time, and I definitely recommend you pick this up if you have people to play with. Risk of Rain 2 is as incredible as it looks. I love the art style. It is both simple and beautiful at the same time, and the particle effects and the environments can be truly stunning. The shooting is nothing spectacular, but it's not really the point, since your skills and movement, as well as the items you pick up, are the true focus of the game. I'm really glad that I picked this up, and I wish I had more people to play with because it's just a ton of fun. And that's maybe the single most important metric with which to measure a game. Okay guys, that will be all for now. Quick little video review for you guys. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and leave a comment if you've tried this game or are curious to do so. If you want more videos like these, please check out my review playlist, to which I will link to right now. And as always, thank you for watching, and I hope I will catch you in the next one.